Welcome back. Now, it's nearly 6 years since the Steinhoff Saga that saw billions in public funds squandered. But there are still no arrests as yet. It's dubbed South Africa's biggest corporate fraud. Investors lost billions in 2017 when the global retailer share price plummeted after irregularities surfaced. Steinhoff now faces a possible liquidation after its shareholders voted against the debt restructuring plan. Meanwhile, its former CEO Markus Jooste is now a wanted man. A German judge has issued an arrest warrant for Jooste after he was a no-show in court. For more on this, we're joined by Rob Rose, who's the Financial Mail editor. Thank you so much for your time, Rob. We do appreciate it. I've spoken to you many times about Steinhoff, and it seems as though nothing much has changed since a couple of years ago. But let's start off with the fact that Markus Jooste has an arrest warrant out for him, given the fact that he has decided not to appear before the German court. This is quite telling, isn't it?
Yeah, Heidi, it is interesting. I mean, it's taken a long time. It's taken 5 years to get to this point, from Steinhoff's collapse to the actual issue of the arrest warrant this week. And it is telling that it's Germany, not South Africa, who's issued the arrest warrant. Certainly, you'd imagine that given that it's South Africa's largest fraud, you'd want him to be prosecuted in this country. But I suppose the Germans have stolen a march on us at this moment, and that's where we are.
We do understand that Markus Jooste has told German authorities that he cannot appear in Germany because South Africa is in possession of his travel documentation, so his passports, which the South African government has made it very clear that they are not in possession of that, and they have not confiscated it or taken it away. This is just another, if I can call it, tactic or ploy by Markus Jooste, isn't it, to not face the music?
Yeah, you certainly don't imagine that he'd want to go to Germany and face the criminal charges. Certainly, so far, he's shown no inclination to answer to any of the allegations against him. It took quite a long battle for him to appear in Parliament back in 2018 to answer some questions, and he fought that quite determinedly. So, yeah, there's no indication that he wants to face the criminal charges. So, passport or no, I think it'll take a huge effort to get him to Germany. I think the bigger issue is, when will the local authorities do something? When will they arrest Markus Jooste in South Africa? And when will he face any justice in this country?
So that is a very important question, because everybody's asking if the German authorities can take some sort of action and start its court proceedings, what's stopping or delaying South African authorities? And you look at the National Prosecuting Authority and the Investigating Directorate and you ask yourself, but what is taking so long? From your coverage and your assessment of this case, I know you've looked at it very closely. What do you think is the delay here?
Well, Heidi, I mean, the truth is that the Germans began investigating this case in 2015. This was 2 years before Steinhoff actually collapsed. And so they have had a head start in doing it. Equally, our prosecuting service, like you say, has been in a bit of chaos for the last couple of years. And their prosecuting strategy on Steinhoff has shifted a number of times. They weren't sure whether to go for the entire fraud, which is this massive 106 billion rand fraud with various dimensions, or to focus on various narrow parts of it. So the way I understand it, the most recent thinking in the NPA and the Hawks is to take one or two of the more obvious frauds and prosecute that, and hopefully there'll be some kind of arrest and some kind of court process relatively soon, because the longer these things drag on, the more likely it is that people will forget what happened, that documents will be destroyed. I mean, certainly you lose lots as time drags on.
Certainly, and I think South Africans are trying to understand, especially because it's a corporate matter, why it's taking so long for investigations and for the NPA and Hawks to act on this. I'm just curious, Rob, do you have any idea where Markus Jooste is and what he does with his time? I know my colleague Rupio Madzena had camped outside his house for some time, and there was absolutely no movement whatsoever. I'm just curious to know what he does with his time. He's a wanted man at this point.
From what I hear, he he hangs around Hermanus. He travels to Stellenbosch. He lives a fairly quiet life down there. I don't think he's the flavor of the month in the kind of circles that he was used to in Stellenbosch and the Western Cape. But I suppose, as for what he does all day, figure out legal strategies. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, he's certainly probably waiting for the Hawks to pounce, which they haven't done so far.
Certainly, it's very interesting. Maybe we should camp outside his house again. Thank you so much for your insights this evening. We do appreciate it. That is Rob Rose, who's the Financial Mail editor.